being someone who was more of a white collar person my whole life, switching to a blue collar trade where I didn't know everything and gaining the respect of people in my local market to even get them to want to work for me was probably my biggest challenge.
You're listening to Toolbox of the Trades, brought to you by ServiceTitan, a podcast for top service professionals where we interview leaders for their best tips and tricks of the trades. Learn how industry trailblazers stay ahead of the competition and how you too can be at the forefront of an industry. Let's jump in.
Hello, contractors, and welcome to the Toolbox for the Trades. Today, you'll hear from Ryan Lucia, a former software executive turned owner of Aaron Overhead Garage Doors in Atlanta, Georgia. The one thing you need to know about Ryan is that he has a bit of a problem. He's addicted to starting new businesses. In addition to running his high-end garage door shop, he runs a marketing agency for the trades called Such and Such Media. Ryan has some great ideas about technology, personal growth and development, even podcasting. I hope you enjoy our chat as much as I did. Thanks for listening. Ryan Lucia, welcome to the Toolbox for the Trades.
Yeah, glad to be here.
I am so thrilled to be here. ServiceTitan has actually sponsored your podcast, Torsion Talk, and you've been a customer for a couple of years now, and I'm just really excited to chat with you. One, because you're in the garage door industry, and I've been talking to a lot of plumbing and HVAC guys recently, and I just want to shake it up a bit. And also I want to talk to another podcaster of the trade. I'm so excited about this conversation. So welcome. Thanks for finally scheduling time to sit down with me.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
So let's kick this conversation off. I start every conversation the same. How did you get into the trades?
So it's a really long story, so I'm going to shorten it. I worked at a software company. We went from, I guess, when I got hired on, it was one of those scenarios where no one would take the job. And I walked into the interview and they were desperate. And I was like, they told me that I wasn't exactly what they were looking for. He was so blunt about it. And he's like, but at this point, we just need somebody who's hungry and willing to work. And I was like, wow, I'll take it. And so I went home, told my wife that I accepted a job with a startup that admitted that they might fail within 6 months. And we just found out she was pregnant, by the way. So she freaked out that I accepted the job without talking to her. But it worked out really well. So I was the first salesperson to join the company, and they gave me a lot of rope. And so we grew that team. The company was wildly successful, and we ended up selling that company for about $65 million and in about 6 years. And so that was fun. That was a really good time. And I learned a lot about growing and scaling a business and building a great team. And really, they gave me a budget for company culture. So I was able to do things to learn about creating good company culture, including flying out to Zappos and doing the tour of them and being able to sit down with their team and ask them questions about, they're kind of known for their company culture. They also have what's something really unique. That's a horizontal org chart. So when we got acquired shortly after, I kind of saw the end of the road coming for me there. We were acquired by a publicly traded company. I was an executive on the team, and I was a GED high school dropout. And they had a little bit of a mandatory or a expectation of what their executives were supposed to have. And so we had that conversation, and I don't know, it wasn't as good of a fit with the publicly traded company as it was with the small software company. So I saw the writing on the wall, and I had a client previously when I owned a marketing company called Aaron Overhead Doors in California. Now, mind you, I had no experience with tools at all. As a matter of fact, my wife would make fun of me when stuff needed to be fixed around the house, and I tried to do it myself. I didn't know the names of tools. I mean, I knew what a drill was. I knew what a hammer was. And that was about it, to be honest with you.
But someone would go like Phillips head screwdriver. You'd be like, you lost me.
Yeah. I mean, it was pretty bad. So we pretty much hired people to fix things around the house. When I had made my decision that I wanted to do something completely different, I was tired of software. It was a fun ride, but I just wanted to change careers. And I was talking to my buddy Larry out in California who owns Air and Overhead Doors. We did marketing for him in the past. So he was a client of mine and we built a good relationship. And I told him, I said, look, I want to do something different. I'm tired of being on conference calls all day. I'm tired of being in boardrooms and flying for 1-day trips to Chicago and New York. And I was like, I want to be home and I want to have fun and I kind of want to sweat and maybe even get dirty. And he was like, let's start at Air and Overhead Door Atlanta. And I was like, psh, I didn't even think about it. I was like, yes. So I went home and told my wife, and this was number 2, where she did not agree at all with the decision that I made. And we fought on it for a little bit, but our wedding anniversary was coming up and I had already planned something big for her. And so we went to the Keys and I took her to a little island off of the Keys called Little Palm Island for dinner to kind of celebrate the night of our anniversary. And I don't know if have you ever heard of Little Palm? It's absolutely gorgeous. They take you out on a little boat and you walk up and we reserved like our own little dinner on the beach and they have these rose petals all laid out and the deer from the island kind of walk up and eat the rose petals and they're all kind
Oh,
of, it was like,
oh my gosh. You're,
it was pretty slick. And now I dropped a pretty dime on that, but all things said, the reason why I bring that up is not to brag about how much I spent on a dinner, but it did take that to get my wife to approve the business being started on something that I had no clue on how to do. But it was at that dinner, we weren't even talking about the business, that she agreed. She looked me in the eyes. I still never will forget. She said, let's do it. And I was like, let's do what? And she's like, let's start the business. And I was like, wow, I don't, now I'm scared because you're bought in and I really have to do this thing. So
the deer was like jumping on his rose petals, like, yep, you're in now, buddy.
Yep. I flew out to California for 1 week and trained on how to repair garage doors. And so, which is not long enough for those of you guys that don't know by any stretch of the means. As a matter of fact, my training process here usually takes anywhere between 3 and 6 months before we even consider people to do anything on their own. So they're usually training for a year before they get a truck. So for me, I had 4.5 days, came back here, announced that I'm launching a garage door company. I had a list of tools that he gave me that I needed, and I went and bought the ones that I really thought I could afford and still keep the cash as much as possible. We cashed out our 401k. We refinanced the house. I mean, we did everything to kind of set ourselves up. I had a spreadsheet that if we hit this amount of money by this amount of time, we'll be able to continue living the lifestyle that we live now. My wife was a stay-at-home wife, so she didn't have a paying job. And so we wanted to try to maintain that because we wanted her to raise our kids as much as possible. And so that was a big jump. I remember that it was a little bit fearful, but I've been a part of startups and seen the opportunity and the growth. And that first full year, we did about $700,000, and that was doing something that I wasn't super familiar with. And to tell you how painful it was, when I got back from California, I announced on Facebook, and one of my friends was like, "Hey, I'll buy a door for my dad. It's his birthday and he needs a new garage door." So I was like, "Cool, I'll go buy, I'll measure, and I'll give you the quote and you can pay and I'll go install it." Well, mind you, I never got trained to do installation. I only learned how to do repairs, and not even all repairs at that. So I went there and installed the door. 11 hours it took me to do that job, and I still didn't do it right. And so we didn't get off to a great start there, but that is my introduction into the trade. I made 3 trips to Home Depot during those 11 hours also because I didn't have everything needed. So that's my introduction into the trade.
Holy cow. And what year was this?
2015.
So still pretty new. Oh, wow. I absolutely love this. Man, I wish I knew your origin story. I totally would have formatted my questions for you today. What a story. So you chose not to mention the software company that you worked for. I imagine that was intentional, but I would love to know a little bit about what you did at that software company. Was that primarily sales and marketing? You mentioned that you learned a lot about business.
Yeah, I learned a lot about business because I had a great mentor there. The CEO was someone who was a little bit traditional, but also a very calculated risk taker. He's been successful at starting or coming into companies that have an aspiration of being sold and growing them really fast and then selling them. And he's duplicated his process like 6 or 7 times. After he left there, he went to a small company in Atlanta who had a really cool technology, and shortly after got acquired by Carvana. So he joined the executive team, I think, at Carvana for a while, and then he just recently retired because his wife's battling cancer, and
Oh,
so he's at home taking care of her.
got it. Wow, what an origin story. I am sorry again for your mentor. It sounds like he really meant a lot to you. So I hope that
It
him and
does.
his family are doing well.
It's amazing. They're doing great. She's a fighter, and she'll make it through.
That's awesome. So you mentioned two things in your origin story that immediately caught my attention. First thing, when I was looking at Aaron Overhead Doors, specifically the website for the Atlanta location where you're at, I was blown away by your web presence. I don't think I've seen, I mean, most of the people that I have on this podcast have a really buttoned up, beautiful web presence, and they're some of the most successful ServiceTitan customers. But I found your web experience to be so fantastic, your brand to be so clear. And did you do some of that work for Larry at the California location prior to starting the Atlanta location?
So he, I talked him into hiring another marketing company because I couldn't do his marketing anymore after starting the door company. And so we both hired a marketing company to build our websites. He stuck with that site, and I went off. And once I launched my new marketing company, we rebranded our website. So we still share the same logo, but we went a little bit of a different direction. Most recently, one of the things you'll see on the website, and it's intentional, is we really focus a lot of our attention on high end garage doors. We've learned that there's in the garage door industry, it's a low barrier of entry. So there's a lot of garage door people out there. Majority of the companies being 2 to 3, maybe 4 people. And so the competition is fierce, especially here in the Atlanta market. I've been told by a local distribution center that they calculated there's over 600 garage door dealers just in the metro Atlanta area. And so everybody's kind of competing for the same market. And we just sat down one day and we realized that, you know what, we're not doing very well. Our brand, what we're trying to create is a prestigious, more higher end customer service focused brand. And so we were never the cheapest, but we still played in the cheap door business. And so you can buy a cheap door around here for $500 installed. Well, I don't want to do anything for under 1,500 or 2 grand when it comes to new doors. So we decided that we wanted to change our image and see if we can focus more of our attention on hiring customers or more complicated jobs that paid out better. And so we redesigned the website to attract people that are looking for high-end modern glass, something that separated us from our competitors. A lot of our competitions are sending like technicians to go to people's homes. And I just, I feel like I'm really good about helping people pick out styles, narrowing down options. And so when I would walk into a customer's home to talk about their door, it was more of a design experience, not just a garage door experience. And the garage door, what a lot of people, don't value is that it takes up about a third of your home's, curb appeal. And a lot of people just ignore that. And I think it's one of the most critical parts of your home because not only is it a third of your home, but it's what most people look at when they pull in the driveway first. And so I take a great pride in being able to take a house and take a door that looks ugly and put something beautiful on there and change the whole aesthetics. So what we've done is we bought a big van and we created a mobile design showroom, and we hired a lady with design background, and she's now our design consultant. And so we actually book door design consultant, whatever, appointments. And so we don't actually call them door measures or door quotes or anything like that. It's a consultation for design.
I absolutely love that. I've never heard anyone else who does that in the space. And when I looked at your website in preparation for today's call, I was like, wow, I never considered a garage door as a work of art until now. Really, the stuff that you guys do is very impressive. And I think that your website is certainly tailored to the ideal customer that you want.
Yep.
The second thing I wanted to bring up in your origin story, you mentioned your wife twice. You mentioned the birth of one of your kids. I also noticed that your family brand was really ingrained on your online presence. How intentional is that?
It is, I believe, especially here in the South, people really love hiring and supporting small business. And so I intentionally make my business look bigger than probably it is, but I do sprinkle more of a family atmosphere. There's lots of photos of our employees on there. I believe that, garage doors in and of themselves are not going to separate us from our competition, which is why I put the faces of our employees on there and their certifications. I also put a picture of our family and talk a little bit about us, and how things got started throughout our website.
I absolutely love it. I think it's fantastic. What's the,
I'll tell you a cool story about that though.
please?
So my son, I took him out once. He's totally annoying when I'm trying to sell something, but we went to this one job and the customer loved him. And he was like three, I think, 3 or 4 years old. He's six now. And we sold the door on the spot. And so I was like, wow, Bubby, you sold your first garage door. And I'll never forget like the smile on his face. So the customer was like, let's take a picture. And so I took a picture of him with the customer in front of the garage door. And my son even told me, like, it was probably 6 months ago. He's like, Dad, he's like, you're stressed out about money. I'll just go with you to go sell more garage doors. And I was like, okay, I see. All right, we got this. So anyway, yeah, he's got a really good closing rate. And I probably need to get him out in the field more.
Yeah, I mean, who needs grade school, right? And just have him ride along on a truck and do those sales. That's so adorable. I really want to know, what was the most surprising thing for you coming from, a sales marketing background in software and in tech to transitioning to the garage door industry? What shocked you the most? What really inspired you or changed your mind about things the most? Like, what really had an impact?
I would say the biggest surprise was I thought I could scale this business like I did software. And after the first year, I was even more convinced, which probably dug me into a deeper hole than I wanted to be in. But in software, when you get to a certain point, you ask your employees, hey, we have a position open. Do you know anybody? And we would get, 5, 6 referrals of people that possibly could do this job that maybe works at a competitor or in a different space. And so I had this mentality that, we'll grow it as fast as we can. And then, we'll scale it and hire. And the problem became there wasn't anybody to hire. So number one, here's this guy who knows nothing about what he's doing, has no background in garage door, no relationship with anybody in the garage door industry here in the Atlanta market. I almost felt like a lot of people were standing back, like watching me, wondering just when I was going to fail. And so I would go to the distribution centers, and when I was backed in and I saw somebody who looked friendly, I would talk to them and, befriend them and get their number and give them my number and, tell them that if, ask them, hey, if I ever had an overload of work, would you ever consider helping me out? And doing that enough kind of helped me build a few relationships and got me a few employees. But that's probably the biggest thing, is being someone who was more of a white collar person my whole life, switching to a blue collar trade where I didn't know everything, and gaining the respect of people in my local market to even get them to want to work for me, was probably my biggest challenge.
Got it. And it sounds like you overcame that challenge by just being yourself, introducing yourself to people, networking as much as you could, even if it felt awkward or weird at supply houses and whatnot.
Yeah. And then I think a lot of people have a perception that, number one, owners don't work as hard as the guys in the field. And then if you're white collar, you don't really understand. So I take a lot of pride in how hard I work. So I just proved that I worked hard. And, I was in a truck, I was answering phones and helping do everything. So it was, until I was able to get out of the field, I think I gained respect that way. Now it's more or less we've realized that there's as many people as there are out there in the industry. It's better for us to bring people who fit our culture and have the work ethic. And then we're structured to train people from the ground up.
Nice. Well, talk to me about that. Talk to me about your culture. When I was poking through the Facebook, your team seems like a really great bunch of people, all genuinely smiling. And I'd love to know a little bit about, your hiring practices now and the culture that you're trying to build at the Atlanta location. And also just quick clarification, are you and you guys mentioned you share a logo, but for all intents and purposes, are you separate entities at this point?
We are.
Okay, cool. So,
Agreement, but yeah, that's pretty much it.
got it. So for Aaron Overhead Doors Atlanta, talk to me about the culture.
So for me, culture is number one. And, that's, I consider it like mama bear with her cubs. I will protect it at all costs. So if anything threatens the culture in our organization, then I shut it down. And as bad as that sounds, that means firing, letting people go, whatever. I will tolerate a lot of things, but when I interview people and when I hire people and they come into the organization, I tell them my number one goal for you is to contribute to making the culture better, not just coming in here and being part of the current culture, but making it better every single person. And so that's my goal. That's what I tell the new employees that their goals are. And when it comes to the company culture here, I like to describe it as family. I like to describe it as that we take care of one another. We're a team. So if one guy's working late and another guy's getting off a little early, he'll run over there and help the guy that's running behind to try to get him home as soon as possible so he's not stuck out there by himself. That's the type of thing that I like. We're very transparent as a leadership team. We share our financials with our group. We talk to them about our profit loss. We show them our numbers month to month. And so I believe that helps get us buy-in also. So the team knows, hey, look, we're in this to make a profit. And it also, I think when a lot of our staff members see you making hundreds of thousands of dollars in a month, and, they may have a bad stretch financially for their personal life, but if they don't understand all the expenses that go into running the business, they may become resentful toward the owner that, hey, how come I'm struggling so hard, but the company did $200,000 last month? I deserve a raise. And that's not really the mentality that I think people should have, but it helps if you educate your employees on exactly how much you're making and explain why it's important that you're profitable and what you need to do to be profitable. And it's a team effort and how a lot of little things can add up to a big loss. And so we share a lot of that information, both financially. We're very transparent. We're open and willing to discuss compensation. I don't want people knocking on my door every day, but if every 3 months you want to sit down and evaluate your compensation, try to find ways to advance, I'm open to that conversation. And so those are the things that I always wanted when I was employed with other businesses. And I think that's what I try to do here.
I'd love that. In the season that this episode will be released, I really want to focus a lot of these conversations on technicians and the technician experience. So it sounds like for you, your goalpost as a leader, your North Star rather, is exactly what you just said. What did I want when I was under an owner, when I was under a CEO throughout all facets of your life? And it sounds like your employees have been pretty receptive to that.
They have. Not everybody's going to respect it, but I do believe majority of people do. 100%.
What does your retention look like in terms of your technicians?
So the first probably 3 years was really hard. We had a couple people that stayed for a long time, and then we just had a lot of turnover on the others, right? And that's actually pretty typical, I think, for a startup in some cases. And then, once you start identifying how to hire people, what to look for in this industry, um, I think that you start to learn the type of people that you want, and then the type of people that'll stay. And that's where we focus our attention. And right now, I would say we have not lost anybody. I think we've only lost 2 employees in the past year and a half.
That's
And
not bad.
it's not, we let both of them go for their own reasons, but everyone else, we're a total of 12 people. And, it's, I tell, like, very few people know this, but I tell a few people that my goal isn't to be the biggest or the best garage door company in the world. I just want to be the best place to work. And so I think we view things a little bit differently. And I'll kind of say these two things because I say them a lot and I drill them into our team's head. Is I learned in my trip to Zappos when I called them a shoe company that they are not a shoe company. They were very blunt about the fact that they're not a shoe company. They are a customer service company that just happens to sell shoes. And so I actually switched that up a little bit. And our little motto here is we're a customer service company in the garage door business. And so everything we do first is customer service. And then after that is garage doors. As far as our employees, we have a focus where we're an employee first company. And it's my belief that if you do a good job of taking care of your employees and they feel like they have job security and they follow the processes, they'll do well here and they'll last a long time. And so we have high standards, but at the same time, we have, in my opinion, happy employees.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I've heard the phrase before. We're a marketing company who happens to sell HVAC or who happens to sell plumbing or do plumbing. So, but I never heard the customer service who happens to do garage door. I think that's fantastic. You mentioned that you have pretty high standards. What are the standards that you look for in Aaron Overhead Doors Atlanta? And one, do you think that all garage door companies should consider this, or do you think it matters based on the culture that you're trying to build?
So it does matter on the culture. I think execution of the processes that we put in place is not easy. If it was, everybody would do it. And so we have high standards for repairs. When we call them service professionals, not technicians here, because we're trying to create a culture of professionalism.
Got it.
So our service professionals, they really focus on the process. That's what we drill into their head, the process. And so with that, when they arrive to a customer's house, we have step-by-step things that we train them on. It goes all the way down to when you knock on the door, take your sunglasses off, look them in the eyes, step back, allow them to have space from the time they open the door, reach in and shake their hand. Don't walk in to shake their hand. I mean, I'm very particular, so I'm not the easiest person to work for. We have a 32-point inspection that's required on every repair that they must do in ServiceTitan, which has been a huge plus for us. We must request or must offer multiple quotes. So you have the good, better, best, which is what I think is probably one of the greatest things that you guys have going for you for ServiceTitan, because it's single-handedly, I think, raised our average profit and revenue per job. Because it sets up an opportunity for customers to easily digest what we're communicating, because we're talking a new language. They're also trying to decipher if we're telling them the truth, while also deciding if they can, trust you. So the more simple and more easily laid out that you can make it, I think the best that it could be. So from the 32-point inspection, we have 3 options. This is what you called us out here for. This is going to get your door running again. This is the next option is that plus here's some preventative maintenance things that we see that could be an issue down the road or in the near future. And then lastly, while we're here, you might want to consider the performance of your door. So we can increase the performance of your door by doing these things. And then just for kicks and giggles, your door's 15 years old and we can certainly repair it, but here's a price for a new garage door if you wanted to just compare. And what that's done for our business is significant. I mean, our customers love that path. We're not pushy. We offer options, educate the customer on the condition of their door by doing the safety inspection and walking them through that. And then we present the options that we have available.
Thank you. Thank you for that unsolicited plug of ServiceTitan. I really appreciate it. I'm glad that you guys get value out of that estimate builder. Um, that's wonderful. And I really want to commend you, Ryan. I want to go to the podcast next, but I think that I personally really agree with the way that you're approaching culture and you're approaching building a team. And I think that it sounds like it's already paid off. And I think it's just going to keep paying off from here as long as you stick to that. So well done.
Yeah,
The final thing I want to talk to before we go into torsion talk, which I'm so psyched to talk about, you come from the software industry, which for the last, like, I want to say 3 decades, software technology, that's always been like a hot spot. Like, oh, I want to work in Silicon Valley. I want to work on software technology. Now you're in you're in the trades. Now you're in blue collar. What would you say to a prospective, like say a recent high school graduate, or maybe someone like me who had a psychology degree in college and doesn't know what they want to do now? What would you say to them if they were asking about what about technology or blue collar work like garage door business? Like, how would you present both options to them?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have traded my time in software for anything. The relationships that I took out of that, the education and business, the professionalism that I learned, I was very rough around the edges. I wouldn't be who I am if it wasn't for the software industry. I think that software is very difficult, and there's a lot of, I guess don't take this the wrong way, but there's a lot of difficult people in software.
Not offended.
Yeah. We, part of my job was trying to reach out to decision makers at Fortune 500 companies and trying to get past gatekeepers. And, you'd have situations where I would have a day trip to Chicago. I'd fly up there, and then, even after confirming the meeting, they'd be like, oh, hey, sorry, something came up. I can't meet. And you're like, I just flew here for this particular meeting. And you have some of that, right? And I know things happen, but I don't know. It's just, I feel like everybody's kind of in their cocoon, and in blue collar world, I don't know. I think I grew up with a family who worked very hard, lower to middle class for the most of the time. And I feel like I relate more closely to blue collar people in some degree, but I definitely carry a lot of character traits of both. And I think I value the blue collar worker more than the white collar worker, just because I think to do what they do every single day, let's leave out the garage doors. These guys drive in traffic all day for a living in Atlanta and wherever you're at. That alone sucks, right? So I would just say that you add on to it grumpy customers and things not going as planned every day. And I think that they work their asses off. And I don't really know that even, I mean, unfortunately, I think they make good money. I think they could make more money. I find it very interesting too. A little side note, some of our customers try to say that, oh, he was only here for 30 or 45 minutes and, you charged me $300 and that's like, $100 an hour. And then we talked a little bit earlier about, our employees trying to understand how we do compensation as well. And, I think there's a lot of education that can take place with that, but these guys work their tail off and deal with a lot of crap on a daily basis. And to be able to do what they do day in and day out with very few breaks is pretty impressive. I got a lot of respect for them. And for people coming out of college, there's a huge shortage in the trade, home services in general. And so, I wouldn't underestimate. I think a lot of people are kind of mind blown with the photos they see on Instagram with the nice cars and the hot chicks and whatever, right? So everybody wants to date a model and drive $100,000 car. And I guess they feel like if they go into a trade, that's never going to happen, but it could. And I feel like, if you if you do a good job and maybe go out and start your own business, maybe you can get that car. And, there's plenty. I have a marketing company, and I can tell you firsthand, one of my clients is a roofing company here in Atlanta, and they have their share of nice cars and trucks. So you can have all those things in the trades.
I would also encourage anyone who may be listening to check out our episode with Weldon Long. It was in the first season, and he has a very fantastic story that some plumbers do drive Cadillacs. So your marketing company, Such and Such Media, correct?
Come up with a name. And I also have a theory that the name of your company absolutely means nothing. So, but it's catchy and people like it. So
I remembered it. So there you go. So did Such and Such Media and the Torsion Talk podcast, did those evolve at the same time?
yeah, actually the podcast evolved out of Such and Such Media. So we started the marketing company about 15 months ago. We're a party of four, and we have a good time. And so we do websites, SEO, email newsletters, a little bit of Facebook management, things like that. And so reputation management. And we saw an opportunity. Actually, as a matter of fact, Adrian, my sound guy, who helped me get the podcast started, I was selling him a door, him and his family, and he had like a YouTube channel, and and he had his little studio in the garage. So I started asking him a bunch of questions, and naturally we hit it off. And I was telling him how I wanted to start a podcast, and he was like, "I can help with that." And so that was the birth of it. And so he sent me links to everything I needed to purchase, and I made the initial investment, and then we launched it. We just completed season 3. They're 20 episodes each. We've got about 30,000 downloads or plays, whatever you want to call it. And it's fun because I get people that hit me up on Facebook all the time. And I didn't expect this, but it just kind of happened. Thank me for the time that I put in to make the industry better. And it's a really cool, it's pretty neat to have that happen.
Yeah, and it's a pretty technical podcast too. I've catched a couple episodes, but I definitely caught snippets where you were talking about things that I couldn't understand because I have no business I have no idea how garage doors work. So I think it's fascinating that in the last 5 years, or almost 6 years, you went from software to an industry, to blue collar industry that you had no experience on. And in that time, you now started a podcast where you nerd out on all the technical elements of that trade.
Well, I learn quick because I dive in and I just consume it. My wife hates it when I get in that mode because I won't come up for air until I'm done. But I would say the first year and a half, we really I was a sponge, and I'm still a sponge, but I did learn a lot. And, people give me more credit than I think I should get because I just find good questions to ask and I interview people. And so I'm actually learning a lot through my podcast as well and building excellent relationships with people in the industry. So it's been a blessing.
That's awesome. So what prompted you to do the podcast in the first place? What planted the idea in your head?
Honestly, it's probably a little bit selfish. I wanted to, well, it was a couple things. Number one, there wasn't a really good source of information in the garage door industry. Two, I saw that there was a lot of people on Facebook having conversations, and it was easy for me to find people to interview. Number three, I wanted to brand myself in the industry and bring awareness to my marketing company. And it's actually done very well. We don't do any marketing for our marketing company. Our podcast generates all of our business. So we've been very blessed.
That's incredible. And I imagine that the podcast as an advertising tool, you just get a lot of respect because unlike some other marketing agencies that couldn't identify a spring from a coil, you actually know the mechanics of a lot of these trades. And so you can create tailored messaging to customers that it actually makes sense and is technically correct.
Yeah. And also a lot of these guys grew up in the trade and became owners. And one of the things that I saw was I'm probably not the guy to talk to these guys about how to repair or install a door, even though I can do it. These guys are probably better than me. What I do have is the wisdom and knowledge of growing companies, marketing, sales strategies, processes, technology, automation, systems, hiring strategies, things like that. And so I think people appreciate my spin on things. And so most of them view me as one of them. And I'm also able to be one of them and share the technical side of things. And I share a lot of my secrets. I'm very transparent. And if people wanted to, like I even tell my employees, and look, if you want to start your own company, let me know. We'll phase you out and we'll figure it out together. And I'm the same way. Like if you want to do marketing on your own, if you want advice, I'll give it to you. I don't have a problem with it. There's there's plenty of business out there for all of us, and I would rather build a bridge than burn one.
I think that's fantastic advice. So many owners out there, I think, are scared that their best techs are going to leave and start their own business. I think it's pretty revolutionary that you're like, I'll help you.
Well, I'm an entrepreneur at heart, and this is such and such was my probably sixth or seventh business I've started since I was in my 20s. And so I definitely know what it feels like to want to jump out on your own and not do it. And so I would rather it happen in conjunction with us so that we can phase that person out and help them get started rather than them leave us and put us in a worse position or even make a mistake and jump out too early and not be ready.
As someone who started, what is that, 6 businesses you said? If there's
Yes.
anyone here listening to this episode who's either a senior tech who wants to go at it on their own, or perhaps a son or daughter who's about to take over the family business and step into the shoes of an owner, what are some of the biggest tips of advice you would give them?
I would say the best thing you could do is know that what you don't know is your biggest disadvantage. So, one of the greatest things I do to learn is listen to podcasts, read books, and I travel to other states where people own businesses and do a really good job in the door industry so that I can learn from them. Although I've been excellent at growing companies, there's a lot of things I don't know about stabilizing them or being, I get bored. So let's say, for instance, I grow a company after 4 or 5 years, I get a little antsy, hence such and such media. And so I hired a general manager, put him in charge, and I do a lot of the marketing stuff now. I'm not very good at taking companies past a certain stage, and I recognize that. And so for you, if you're wanting to recognize what you're good at, hire for your weaknesses, and then always be dumb enough to learn something new. And I would say budget enough money every year to go to your association or your industry expo to make contacts and pick people's brains, get on Facebook and network with other owners, LinkedIn, go out and ask them. Like, I'm probably leaving in December to go to like I think fourth or fifth business since I've been in business, to go shadow an owner and just learn, what are you doing? How do you do this? How do you do that? I'll come back here and sit down with my general manager. We went to Ohio not too long ago, him and I both, for a few days to meet with one owner because we were buying a new space. We didn't have a big warehouse before. We were moving into a big space with a big warehouse with dock doors and doing direct shipped. And we were like, all right, there's so many things we don't know about how to design the warehouse, how to store things, how to prepare for shipments. I wanted to know all that, and I was driving myself crazy. So I knew somebody did know that. So we flew out there, hung out, came back here, built our processes around what we learned. And that'll save you those couple $1,000s that you spend on that will probably save you tens of thousands of dollars in mistakes or time.
Yeah, and I will also echo that. I think every single person I've had on this podcast has welcomed other people into their shop.
We've had people,
Everyone,
and I go to others. I think it's very important.
yeah, I think there's a lot of folks in the industry who are very supportive of that. So definitely build a network and use it.
Trade too. I learned a lot from my HVAC friend down the street. He's on ServiceTitan, and when we first got started, or maybe even before we signed up, I can't remember. First time he ever helped us, he allowed us to send one of our dispatchers over there to sit with their dispatcher and learn how they use ServiceTitan. And so, yeah, I think you can hook up with local companies that are outside your trade, but that are local. You don't have to pay thousands of dollars, and you can learn things that other door companies or other HVAC companies aren't going to learn because you're taking techniques from other industries.
Yeah, 100% agree. What has been the most interesting, eye-opening conversation you've had on the Torsion Talk podcast?
I would say the one that sticks out the most is probably season 1, episode 2. It was my first interview. My first episode 1 of season 1 was just me introducing myself. I brought on a gentleman named Tom Wadsworth, and he is like a journalist in our industry who is a industry advocate and an investigative reporter. And our industry is flooded with spam and some pretty dirty tactics. And so having him on and being able to have him discuss some of the things that he's encountered, I think that was probably, he exposed the spam and how bad it was in our industry single-handedly. And he continues to do a good job of shining the light on that.
Got it. What were some of the podcasts that inspired you to start a podcast?
So I like Joe Rogan, which who doesn't? I don't know that I've ever made it through all 3 hours of any of his, but I'm, when I was in a truck, I've never been a great reader. So I had some disability, like learning disabilities growing up, diagnosed with like ADHD and dyslexia and a bunch of other stuff. Long story short, I struggle reading books. I can't read and then tell you what I read about. So I'm an audible and visual learner. So it was great because when I was in the truck doing repairs or whatever, I just put headphones in and I would listen to books or podcasts. And so I'm a big audio book reader, I guess is probably the right word to say. I'll tell you one of the best books that I've recently read that has made a huge impact, Mastering the Rockefeller Habits. One of the takeaways we took out of that book was he suggests doing a daily huddle. So now we do a 15-minute daily huddle with our entire team where we go through and we look at the previous day's jobs, current day's jobs, read some positive reviews we got from the previous day, and we discuss any road bumps that we hit. Hey, was there any issues that popped up yesterday, whether it was, we put the wrong address in or we sold the job wrong or whatever. And then we discuss it and we talk about what we could have done different. And then we do it quickly, 15 minutes, and then we're out. Everybody goes to their jobs. And since we've been doing that, it's been a huge thing. And then now I'm reading Extreme Ownership. So he's just really cool. And he has some really cool stories. And I think he's just an impressive person. And I do believe that anything that happens in your business is your fault. So I'm a big believer in the extreme ownership.
That's been recommended before. I need to add that to my list of nonfiction books. I like to go back and forth between fiction and nonfiction, cleanse my palate of all the good stuff I learned with made up fun stories. What are your goals for the next couple of years? Obviously COVID hit us all with crazy, I don't even know what to call it, a crazy just obstacle. There we go. I got it. What do you want to do with Aaron Overhead Doors and with such and such media?
That's a good question. And I actually just had this conversation like right before this in another meeting. I do set goals. I set goals not as much monetarily, but more, I know you're probably going to think I'm weird. Your listeners are going to think I'm weird, but every year I try to do at least 3 big things that make me uncomfortable. And it's hard to make me uncomfortable. So they got to be really big and really daunting. I take big risk. Big risk is what got me here. And I continue to take big risk. And so that's kind of what I try to do. I think I'm smart enough to take calculated risk, but big risk. And so that's, I try to never be comfortable. I'm that person that literally thrives on not being comfortable. I change the icons placement on my phone on a regular basis. My wife hates me to death, but I constantly try to move placement of the cups and dishes on the cabinets in the kitchen. And I just think we become automated too much, and then we don't process properly. So I like to process. I like to think. I like to change things. I know my staff doesn't love it as much as I do, but if something's not working and we've tried it every which way, we're going to shut it down. I'm not going to let it last. And so with my marketing company, I struggled a little bit because I've always gone 1,000 miles per hour on growing businesses, and it's a lot of stress on me and my family. So my wife agreed to allow me to start the business after I had decided to do it anyway, by the way, to as long as I didn't have like extremely aggressive goals where it just sucked the life out of me. And so I have a thing that I do now is I committed to this in the very beginning, and it's I have no expectations and no limitations. I just work and my team works, and what happens happens. And believe it or not, it's probably because of that philosophy going to be the most successful business that I've got. It's doing very well. We're extremely blessed, and we're having a fun time doing it.
That's awesome. And I really like how you adjusted your goals. I like how self-aware you are and how you've learned from every iteration of your business ventures and have applied those changes to where you're at today. I think that's very, very smart. And I would encourage anyone listening to be more self-aware of their weaknesses, what they're really good at, what they need help with, and just figuring it out from there. But I love that. No expectations and no limitations. Is there anything we should have talked about that we didn't?
I mean, I think that systems and processes is probably something that I think I could speak to. One thing that I see a lot of businesses in the blue collar world, they're slow to adopt technology. I think with all the automation that we've been able to create in our offices, we probably would be paying for two more staff members if we didn't have that right now. And so I think if you don't know technology, I mean, don't be afraid of it, right? Also, there's probably people more than willing to help you create automation or point you in the right direction. And so I think there's the common theme that I see in a lot of garage door companies or HVAC companies, electrical companies. They've got good processes. And, I think everybody wants to run out and start their own company. But if you're not organized and you don't have the ability to structure good processes and maintain accountability around those processes, you're not going to be successful. I mean, you may be able to own your own business, but that's only going to take you so far. And so without trusting other employees and having accountability and good processes in place and continuous education, that's the common things that I see with businesses that do really well in the trades from my interactions.
Yeah, I'll give that 100%. And then also plug another episode of ours, which is the first episode of this season with Al Levy. He's the systems and processes guru, self-proclaimed, very good. I've heard nothing but good things.
Ask you questions.
You can ask me questions, of course.
Have you been interviewed on the show yet?
No, I haven't. I haven't been interviewed on the show yet. I love getting it.
Questions for you.
Please. Oh my gosh. I have rapid fire questions for you, but we'll just give the audience a bonus. Give it to me.
How long have you been with ServiceTitan?
A little over 3 years.
What do you like most about it?
I like talking with business owners like yourself and learning about how they grow and scale their business. And I would say 90% of probably more like 95% of them really give a crap about the people that work for them. And so that makes me feel good about the world.
Cool. What's your favorite book?
I mean, I have a Harry Potter tattoo, so that kind of gives it away. But no, I'm a giant reader. I would say that The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings trilogy really set the stage for me for reading. And then in the nonfiction world, I absolutely love Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers.
Oh, very good. He's a good author. I feel like he pumps out a new book like every 6 months. I don't know how he does it.
I mean, when you're a 8,000 time best-selling author that just sits on piles of money, I'm sure it's pretty easy.
Right. All right. So who is your favorite person that you work with at ServiceTitan?
Ooh, I would probably say I would give it a, you know what? I really work with some fantastic people at ServiceTitan. The manager I have now, shout out to Scott Goldman, great great person. Love working with him. And then I just also hired a social media manager, social media and content strategist, Natalie Koch, she's my first direct report, and I'm loving working with her. So I would say both of them.
What motivates you and makes you enjoy your job? Like, what does ServiceTitan do that motivates you and makes you wake up and enjoy your job every day?
Two things. One, I get to do a podcast for ServiceTitan, which I love interviewing people.
Love it too.
Yeah. Webinars, which involve
by the way. So yeah, you can tell.
Well, now I just have to come on yours. Webinars, which also have a performative aspect to it. I'm a comedy writer as well, and a comedy performer when I'm off the clock. So
nice.
These allow me to have fun in my job. And then I also like ServiceTitan's mission statement. I've worked for a bunch of tech companies before. Several of them don't exist anymore. And ServiceTitan is the first tech company I've worked for that I think brings real value to people's lives. And so I think what they're trying to do is a really admirable mission. So I relate to that mission. My dad is a blue collar worker. So I'm born in the trades, so to speak. So I resonate with a lot of things.
And what city do you live in?
I currently live in Los Angeles, but I'm born and raised Queens, New York. So I left New York City for Los Angeles for a quieter life.
Very cool. And if you were president for one day, what change would you make?
Oh, but we're going to get political here.
Unless it's just...
It's if I was president next week, I would probably do as much as I could to impact climate change and green initiatives. I also think that there's a lot of opportunity in green initiatives and in just sourcing different types of energy. So I would put as much presidential power towards that as I could.
Good for you. I think that's good.
Thanks.
All right. I'll let you take over your podcast now. Sorry.
I have rapid fire questions for you. Although I think that president one is really good. I might steal that. How do you take your coffee?
Black, no sugar.
If you could have dinner with one person, dead or alive, who would it be?
Jesus.
What's the number one thing you're trying to learn more about right now?
Me. Probably.
If money weren't an object, so you had unlimited resources, what's the first thing you would do?
I would definitely pay the people that help me become successful, take care of them. And then I'm a huge supporter or someone who would like to do more in the sex trafficking industry. I would fund that more.
Got it. And what's the number one thing every contractor must do to run a successful business?
Set the example.
Very nice. Very nice. A lot of that extreme ownership there too, and the systems and processes. Well, Ryan, I want to thank you for sitting down and chatting with me for a little over an hour and being so generous with your time. I really enjoyed getting to know you. We've been chatting over email for almost a year now, so it's nice to finally be able to put a face to the email address.
Yep, that's right.
I thank you again for being
on the podcast. You had mentioned that you have to come on my podcast. One of the shows that we have this next season, which is season 4 for us, we actually are talking about marketing systems and software. And one of the interviews that I have set aside is for you, actually. So
fantastic.
We are hoping to have you come on and allow us to ask you questions about ServiceTitan, even though I could probably sit down and talk about it myself. I think it would be more entertaining for you to talk about the questions.
Oh my gosh, I would be so happy to. So what we'll do is we'll coordinate and we'll make sure that these episodes come out around the same time so people can get 2 full hours of Jackie and Ryan if one isn't enough for them.
All right.
Thanks so much, Ryan. I really appreciate it.
Yep. Take care, guys.
Ever wonder how much your business is worth? So many owners ask that question and have no idea where to turn for an answer. In just a few clicks, ServiceTitan's new Service Business Valuation Calculator can give you an easy and free estimate of the current value of your business. Whether you're thinking about selling your company or looking to track growth, check it out now. Visit ServiceTitan.com/value. Again, that's ServiceTitan.com/value. See how much your business is worth today. Are you looking for a resource to help you build an extraordinary service company? Well, then look no further than ServiceTitan's Contractor Playbook. We designed this free all-in-one resource authored by the industry's greatest minds to help you set your company up for success. Learn best practices from marketing to new and existing customers, how to drive your company's culture, providing excellent customer service, and more. Just go to servicetitan.com/getplaybook to access the free digital guide. That's servicetitan.com/getplaybook.